Bien, cambiamos a continuación de región geográfica. Va a intervenir a continuación Mohamad Hamaouie, que tiene su oficina en el Líbano y trabaja por todo Oriente Medio, haciendo una arquitectura fantástica también.
Thank you for hosting me in the university. Future colleagues and colleagues with us, I'll try to explain in brief what vernacular architecture in my area is about. Vernacular architecture is an international language. Everybody would understand it by looking at its form, but we can only understand it by understanding its spirituality. Mi'mar in Arabic stands for an architect. Well, Mi'mar technically is a builder. He's a master builder. And he's equipped with all the technique of the past, and he understands the way the community, he's part of this community, and he understands every single component that makes the building alive. Then he works with craftsmen in order to make architecture of beauty. Unfortunately, our education system have broken up this piece. We have an architect, a facade architect, a sustainable person who does architecture, and then a designer, and then an architect at the site. And worse is that we have an architect, and then we have a contractor. That's how we had to do a lot of drawings in order to explain to somebody who's a bit alienated from this architecture the way to do this type of architecture. My lecture is going to be in two parts. Part one is the way I understand the architecture of my area and the broader architecture of a civilization that had the same spirituality, but have made different forms by working with different tradition and different technology. Thank you. I was blessed to live in a village. Deir al-Amar, in English, it's the monastery of the moon. And this village is all constructed in stone. And it's around a big piazza. All their houses, public building, private building, palaces, are all courtyard houses. And as a child, I was fascinated living in a courtyard house, that you're inside the place, but at the same time you are outside of that place. And the people who live in a courtyard have their private sky. I'm going to, my education as a modernist made us not only have this break in the urban continuity, but it made a scar in our thinking. And I wanted, through my practice, to pull back the architect in me and to put back the builder in me. I had to go back and study the architecture of a vast area that spans from the east till Andalusia and Portugal, in order not to describe the architectural language of the city, but mainly to have the understanding of how those cultures have made things. It's the thing that I came about, that I'll try to convey to you, is that we used to do things from outside in, from working on the volume and going inside, whereas traditionally, in those cities, we do the reverse. A builder will come at the site with the client. He understands the site, and then looking at this trapezoidal site, he would first of all construct a courtyard. And although we look at those cities as natural and organic growth, and we do not really understand it's like a disordered city. Actually, it's extremely ordered, but it's an order that is higher, that we have to go and dig through to understand its vocabulary. So a builder will come and in a simple tracing will trace a courtyard, whether it's a public building or a private building, and then he would go and link it to the main spine of the city, and eventually the rooms will be taken as to define the lot. So most of those cities, whether that's private gardens, khans, which are factories, mosques, and private houses, have all courtyards of different scale. And the scale vary from climate to climate. So there is a cool courtyard where you really need the sun to penetrate till the floor of the courtyard, and hot courtyards in hot areas. I'm just jumping from place to place to explain things. Architecture encloses everything. It encloses the construction, the interior, the crafts. It's all part of one music that contributes to the formation of those spaces. Public places are very important. The public place is not only driven by the government. It's the community have a say in those public places. So really the public places becomes part of the integration of the house itself. So the tenant also have a say on the way things are made. I'm not going to explain about Spain and Venice, but I think it's lovely when two universes mix together. And we have them in Spain, and we have them in Turkey, and Venice is where East meets the West, as if the mind and the heart are coming together into one body. What I understood from those learnings that we've worked in the office together, we were at the same time designing, but at the same time researching those spaces, because it wasn't the mode of drawing those type of buildings, so we had to do them ourselves. Materiality is very important. We do things in brick. It has a longer time. It's more durable. It stays for hundreds of years. Making brick construction gave me another understanding to architecture. This particular villa is in Bahrain, and the daughter of the client is a young girl with autism. And autism, this thing where people are extremely aware of their senses. When we did this project for her, the young lady grew up very peacefully in the house. And we realized that it's this building material, which is very same to our nature, our body. Building with any natural material, whether it's timber, brick, stone, and even ice. People who live there have this interaction between the place they live in. The crafts that we do goes from stone to gypsum, and eventually to internal spaces, so everything is really related to each other. I had an encounter with a lady in Loire Valley, and she was saying that a friend of her, a scientist, had visited the monastery, and there were nuns doing pottery. So he took the shape of that particular pot and make it in the same material, but in a factory. And then eventually put both products under the X-ray. And the pots made in the factory have the same energy vibration from them, whereas the pottery made by the nuns have different vibes. And even the pots made by the factory have the same energy transmitted, whereas the pots made by the nuns, each one of them is different. And at a further investigation, he discovered that those nuns, if a nun is in peace with herself, she would communicate with the material she's doing it. And the whole product is taken from her soul. So that's why it's changing from a nun to a nun, from a pot to a pot. So imagine you're sitting in a space where all those craftsmen have given their positive energy to you. It's quite fascinating. I have worked in different projects. This is Salal Oman, public places, souks, private gardens and palaces, farmhouse, a courtyard, and a family courtyard. All of them have this simplicity. I do not wake up every Monday morning to design something new. If it's a house, it's a house. If it's a public building, a mosque, or a souk, I start from the topography of this building that have been carried with us for generations. My only intervention is to perfect what it has been done before. We're not going to a masquerade party where every person wants to mimic another person. That's something extremely simple, and we just do what the past have been doing for us. Because of this rupture between the architect and the contractor, we have to exhaust ourselves to do drawings in order to convey the message for the contractor. This is different things. During the construction period with master craftsmen, because in principle, craftsmen are hands-on the job. They do not draw. So we will help them in order to do those measurements, whether it's a carpet, a wooden door, a brass door, stone, and a ceramic carving. I mean, that's the way we interact with the craftsmen. Now I'm going to go to some selected areas we did. This is Albania. Escuela was the capital long time back. During communism, religion was, not permitted. So churches and mosques were demolished. And I had the good fortune to design the central mosque in Escuela near the church there at the same time. And I got some picture of the old mosque in order to have this continuity of the people living in the place, because they're attached to their public places like mosques and churches. And at the inauguration, the celebration of the Muslim and Christian community were together in the same area. Aleppo is a place that's under fire for the last 7 years, the whole of Syria. We working on an intervention near the citadel. Aleppo in the history is one of the longest human-occupied city. It's at the road it's a Silk Road between Europe and China. Its fabric has the same understanding of any traditional city. It's interesting looking at those different courtyards along the city that it's like us, you can judge the person by looking at his form, but you can only understand it when you're inside the courtyard. So you have a courtyard which is more lavish because the tenant is a rich person. Another one, he has just a tree, a lemon tree, but courtyards are courtyards. Our intervention was in the area of the demolished part here. And our innovation is to make it car-free and car-accessible for the people who live there. We went and used the same urban fabric. And we are putting back the people in their own places. So we have here the Khan, which is a workshop for brass, and the rest of the souk. We have an arts and crafts place and a bigger caravanserai, which is turned into an hotel. All this is a new construction, but integrated part of the whole city. The Khan is partially destroyed. This is the remaining part, so we reconstructed the courtyard in a contemporary way to have more flexibility for the people who want to show their places. The arts and crafts is typically, traditionally in every old city, the craftsmen work down and the apprentice are living on the upper place. So we've made volumes on courtyards that are basically neutral to the city, but at the same time, a dialogue with the old city. Tripoli, it's a project that now we're doing as a Mamluk building that used to be a Byzantine church, but since it's now working as a mosque, we had to understand the Mamluk architecture, which is coming from Cairo, and all the craft and building material in order to upgrade the mosque to its past glory. In Mamluk architecture, houses are connected to the mosque. Our intervention is only putting back the crafts into the way they should be. Baalbek in Lebanon, Bekaa, it's an area what's full of clay, so most of the architecture is in mud brick and ram earth. We have made here an escape. It's a farm, which is made of the same material. In this particular project, we have recycled old building material from the area. So we had the flooring, the doors, the steel doors, the beam, the ceramics. We have given them a new form, but we've preserved them and given them a new dimension. The Gulf of Arabia has a similar architectural language from Oman to Kuwait on both sides of the bank. It's a hot and humid area. That's why the Malkafs, the wind tower, is a system that was discovered and made in Iran, Yazd, and then carried by the people who cross this Gulf area in a dry and humid, a dry and hot place. The Malkaf is carrying the wind, and they would put here water jars, so the humidity will be carried inside the main spaces. And the place that I worked in the northern part of Saudi Arabia, no need for wind because it's no need for humidity because anyway it's very humid. So it's just carrying the wind in the places just to take off the humidity from your body. We've designed a souk, which is around a courtyard, different courtyards. It has the same language pattern of the area with places of different architectural language, bigger courtyard, smaller courtyard, and the passage through. I'm going to, without explaining, going to some projects. This palace in a palm grove is traditionally fortified from the outside because water is very scarce in this area and you want to maintain it and maintain the vegetation. So this is defined by big boundaries with minimal gate intervention, and internally it's like a mini paradise. Inside spaces, those cool areas admit light and you're a bit enclosed from the outside. Another project which is, with the help of the craftsmen, made it shine. And my last intervention here is in Jeddah. Now we're working in the old town of Jeddah. Jeddah in Arabic is grandmother, and it's, while researching here, we saw a sketch by an old, by a Westerner who traveled, and there is the sketch of the tomb of Eve, our grandmother. That's why Jeddah is grandmother, and it's at the edge of the old city. The city is not particular to Jeddah itself, which is a gate for Mecca. Most of the coastal line and the Red Sea have this type of architecture from Cairo to Oman. Understanding this new type of architecture for me, because it's not based on courtyard architecture, it's mainly have a different way. We had to go and visit. For a year we've been doing researches, sketches. This is the Tomb of Eve. And the streets are fascinating. It's a UNESCO part, but at the same time, it needs a lot of work. We had to draw to understand the structural component of the structures, the building typology, the building elements, and the element that's come into the city. And we have now, this year, we're doing the first intervention, which is in the city center. And we are, other than refurbishing the storefronts, we're putting building that stitch back the road that have cut through the city. So this big road that made the city divided into two, we are putting elements that are functional and have a very soft drive through the city. We're upgrading the mosque. We have a Friday market here, and then a cafe linked to a visiting center, and the kiosk for orange juice. The architectural construction is part of the heritage, so we're working exactly as it used to be in the past. Now, a bit away from the city center, one can indulge himself to be a bit more contemporary in working with this. Thank you very much.